Welcome, future teachers. Consider this explainer your one-on-one coaching session designed specifically to get you ready, not just to totally crush your certification exam, but for the very real, incredibly rewarding work of building a truly inclusive physical education environment. Today, we're diving into Competency 004, K, Understanding Students' Diverse Needs. As a future educator, you're going to walk into a beautifully diverse gymnasium full of students every single day. And figuring out exactly how to meet their individual needs, well, that's literally the foundation of life-changing teaching. Let's get started. To really ground us in what this actually looks like in practice, let's jump right into a totally realistic classroom challenge. Picture this. You're finally teaching your very own class. You've set up this fantastic throwing activity, the gym is just buzzing with energy, but you notice a student with limited mobility. They're struggling to reach the target, and you can practically see the frustration building up. So ask yourself, as the teacher running the room, what's your next move? What specific instructional decisions do you make right there, in that exact moment, to make sure this student isn't just sitting on the sidelines watching, but is actively and joyfully in the game? Well, the big secret here is that you absolutely do not need to scrap your entire lesson plan. Nope, you just need to adapt. Simple, intentional adjustments are your best friend. For example, you might just adjust the distance to the target, maybe scoot it a bit closer for the specific student. Or maybe you provide some adaptive equipment, like trading out a heavy ball for a lighter one or finding a ball with a much better grip. By making those quick, specific tweaks, you're allowing that student to safely and successfully participate right alongside everyone else. You're removing the barrier without lowering your expectations for them. And honestly, that is the heart of what we're talking about today, taking teaching theory and turning it into real action on the gym floor. Section 1. The vocabulary of varied needs. Okay, so to make these kinds of on-the-fly decisions, you've first got to know what you're actually looking at, right? We need to look at these terms not just as dry stuff to memorize for a test, but as a critical awareness you'll use every single day. It all starts with this overarching concept, varied needs. The definition is simple but really profound. Differences among students that may affect learning, participation, or performance. Listen, your students are going to show up to your class with an incredible mix of abilities, backgrounds, and experiences. And it's so important to remember, these aren't deficits, they're just differences. But those differences directly change how they learn and experience your class. Your job is to anticipate that these varied needs exist right from the start and plan things out so your gym is accessible to absolutely everyone. Let's break down those varied needs into 5 specific areas. You're definitely going to be tested on these, but more importantly, you're going to see them in your real students. First up, physical challenges. This affects movement, mobility, or strength, kind of like our student from the throwing drill. Next, emotional challenges. This might affect how a student regulates their behavior during a really heated, competitive game. Then we have learning disabilities, which affect how a student processes information. Maybe they have a hard time remembering a complex set of multi-step instructions you just gave. We also have language differences, where variations in English proficiency might affect a student's grasp of the game rules. And finally, sensory difficulties. I want you to really picture this one for a second. How might a sensory difficulty involving hearing or touch impact a student who is standing in a massive, echoing gymnasium with whistles blowing everywhere? It could be incredibly overwhelming, right? Being able to recognize these categories helps you pinpoint exactly why a student might be struggling, and that is step 1 to helping them succeed. Section 2. True inclusion and equity. So now we're shifting from just spotting these needs to understanding the actual philosophy behind how we support them. And this is a massive distinction for your exam and honestly for your career. Inclusion versus equity. People throw these words around like they mean the exact same thing, but they really don't. Inclusion is the ultimate goal. It's providing opportunities for all students to participate meaningfully. It basically means everyone is in the game. Equity, on the other hand, is the action you take to make that inclusion happen. Equity is giving students the specific, individualized supports they need to actually be successful. Think of it like this. If inclusion means everyone gets a pair of shoes, well, equity means making sure everyone gets a pair of shoes that actually fits them. Make sense? You literally cannot have true inclusion without practicing equity. Section 3. Adapting your instruction. So how do we take these big, beautiful philosophies and make them work when we've got 30 kids running in every direction? We do it by actively adapting our instruction. And for this, you need to know the difference between an accommodation and a modification like the back of your hand. An accommodation is a support that helps a student access the lesson without changing your underlying expectations. Going back to our throwing drill, moving the target closer, or giving the student a lighter ball, that's an accommodation. They are still practicing the core skill of throwing to a target, exactly like everyone else.
The how changed, but the what stayed the same. Now, a modification is a fundamental change to the activity, task, or expectation itself. Say a student's physical challenge meant throwing was entirely impossible. A modification might be changing the expectation altogether, so that student works on a different fine motor skill, like rolling a ball down a ramp. Accommodations change the how, modifications change the what.
Let's pull this all together into an actual practical workflow. This is the 3-step mental checklist you're going to run through on the fly as a teacher. Step 1, identify the varied need. You're observing, assessing, and figuring out what the barrier is. Is it physical, sensory, language-based? Step 2, choose the appropriate accommodation or modification to address that specific need. Step 3, implement the adjustments seamlessly to promote inclusion. And listen, this isn't a one-and-done thing you do at the start of the semester. This is a dynamic, continuous cycle. Effective physical education teachers run this exact 3-step process through their heads dozens of times in a single class period to make sure everyone has equitable access.
Section 4, your future classroom and exam takeaways. We've covered a ton of great ground today, from the core vocabulary to real instructional strategy. Let's bring all this theory back down to earth with some actionable takeaways so you are ready to ace your exam and step confidently into your future classroom. Number 1, never ever forget that all students must have access to physical education, period. Number 2, the best teachers don't just teach a lesson plan, they teach the human beings right in front of them. That means you have to actively adapt your instruction to meet individual needs. Number 3, keep the why in focus. Inclusion is not just a buzzword. It drives real participation, builds massive student confidence, and creates genuine learning. And finally, your accommodations and modifications are your best tools. They're the levers you get to pull to ensure every kid succeeds. If you keep these 4 pillars locked in, you won't just pass the test. You'll create an environment where every single student feels safe, seen, and successful.
I want to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with one really powerful question to think about. What will your inclusive classroom look like? When you're the one holding the clipboard, when you're the one blowing the whistle, how are you going to apply these concepts? How will you make sure that every single student, no matter what their very needs are, feels like they truly belong in your game? I want you to visualize that empowering, inclusive environment right now, because you've got the tools, you've got the knowledge, and you are going to make an incredible impact on your students' lives. Keep that vision front and center as you finish preparing. You've totally got this.